Hi, everyone. My name is Hugo Bernier, and I'm going to be talking to you about a whole bunch of web parts. I'm not just demoing one web part today. I'm demoing 20 web parts, and it's a web part sample that uses the PnP Reusable controls to add charts to your web parts. There's tons of great libraries out there to create charts. One of the most flexible ones out there is Chart.js, but it can be difficult to add Chart.js to a web part and have all the cool responsive behavior, theme awareness, fluent UI integration, and all the other cool features that we've learned to love in SharePoint web parts. Fortunately, there's the PnP Reusable Controls library, which makes it easy for you to integrate the Chart.js in your SPFX solutions. If you haven't used the PnP Reusable Controls, it's a node module that you can add to your SPFX solutions and add tons of cool controls, not just a chart control. There's a web part title control and a placeholder control and a folder picker, lots of really cool stuff. So I created the chart control component, it seems like a couple of years ago now, but when I did create the chart control component for the PnP Reusable Controls, I also made sure to create samples to show how to use pretty much every single feature of the PnP chart control. So the chart control, and this is actually the list of web parts in the chart control solution, it's got about 20 web parts. In fact, I think it's exactly 20 web parts that show you how to use all the features. So the chart web part, that's obviously got some cool gratuitous animations. By default, the chart control will actually try to render an accessible version of every chart. And there's a sample called accessible bar chart that actually shows you what the web part renders behind the scenes. So the table that's created at the bottom here normally is not visible, but is available to someone who's using a screen reader to read the content. And that's done automatically. All you have to do is provide a title and a description to your chart. There's also an area chart with lots of cool little options here showing how to integrate with the various buttons and things like that. Bubble chart, which is fun. Now, I think I even added the ability to pop the bubbles because I had nothing better to do. There's a horizontal bar chart with lots of features, again, to add dynamic sections and stuff like that, data sets. And line chart where you can have, each point can have a different type of point, circle, triangle, and so on. Pie chart. Polar area chart is there too. Again, you can dynamically add data. And there's a radar chart as well. There's a scatter chart, and the chart control also uses or supports using things like patterns and gradients. So this is a sample of using a donut charts with or without patterns. I would never use so many patterns on a web part, but again, this was just to demonstrate all the patterns that are available in the control itself. You can also use combo charts. So there's a combo chart sample that shows you how to combine multiple charts into one. And the chart control even supports custom plugins, so you can completely override the rendering behavior of your chart. So this is an example of custom rendering here using a plugin. I saw this really cool chart somewhere, and I decided to emulate it using the chart control. Another example of a plugin here is an example of showing real-time data in a continuous feed. So that updates all the time. And just for good measure, I even added a dynamic property web part or web parts that connect two web parts together. So you can create clickable chart areas and update the chart data based on a selection from another web part. And that's also a great way to learn how to handle events in a web part. But my favorite web part is probably the Chartinator. And those of you who have children may remember a show called Phineas and Ferb. In that show, there was an evil scientist who created evil inventions in every episode, and he always called his inventions something inator. So he's got a baby-inator, a shrinkinator, a bake sale oblinator. So I decided to create a Chartinator. And if you've used the out-of-the-box quick chart web part in SharePoint, you'll know that it allows you to quickly build charts using custom data and by reading data from a list. However, if you can only do column charts and pie charts, and it supports only up to 50 data points and 12 if you enter them manually. And that's a screenshot of the out-of-the-box quick chart web part. Now, so let's make sure this is working. So again, this is the quick chart, just because I know we just switched between screens. So the quick chart allows you to do column chart and pie chart. The Chartinator, on the other hand, a Chartinator adds a few more options. You have pretty much every single chart possible. So line charts, bar charts, horizontal charts, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through every one of them. You can still enter data manually, or you can get data from a list. But there's more. So you can actually create palettes or use the palettes, and those are the Office palettes. Based on the type of chart you select, it'll actually change the options that are available here. And when I had first built this web part, it was actually more an exercise on how to use property pane controls as opposed to creating a fancy chart. So again, if I change, let's say, donut charts, you'll see that the options here are donut settings versus the bar set settings. So every web part has, or every chart type has different options, things like layout, whether you want the legend to show up or not, whether you want tooltips, and even a cool animation selector. So it'll actually allow you to control how the web part's going to animate. Now, of course, because I'm trying to do this, it's not displaying very well on the screen capture, I think. But lots of options out there. It was really fun to use. And again, I'm always looking for opportunities here to improve. But let's switch back to the code. All right, so let's show you the code here. So there's, in the chart control from the PnP control library, reusable control library, you can pass static data. And by static, I don't mean like hard-coded data. I mean data that you may have preloaded before you actually render the web part. So the static bar chart sample actually just does that. So this is the bar chart static, and it actually, in order to use the chart control, of course, you need to add the PnP Reusable control to your project library. And then when you create the bar chart, you can specify what kind of chart you want. So in this case, instead of using a string that says pi, bar, whatever, I use a chart type enumeration. So I can do chart type dot pi, for example. And then all you need to do after you import the reference is you create a chart control. And inside the chart control, you have the data element, and you can pass data. In this case, I'm passing labels and data sets. Of course, I could have retrieved that data from somewhere else and passed it in here, but for the purpose of the demo, I just hard-coded the data. And then at the bottom here, like I said, you just have to specify what type of chart it is. And because there's a chart type enumeration, you can just go chart type dot, and it'll tell you all the types of charts that are available to you. If you want to do dynamic data, and by dynamic, I mean you want the web part to dynamically load the data and display kind of a loading spinner while you're retrieving the data. And then once the data is retrieved, it'll actually render the data. All you need to do is pass a data promise. So here's the bar chart demo, which actually renders dynamic data. And I do the same thing. I include a chart control, but instead of passing a data prop, I pass a data promise. And hopefully you've played with promises in JavaScript or TypeScript. It's a great way to do things asynchronously. So in this case, I'm calling a function that returns a data promise. While I'm at it, I'm also displaying a loading template. So you can actually, there's a loading template that gets created automatically for you, but you can override the template. In this case, I'm doing a gratuitous spinner when the data is loaded. And then my load async data is actually just, again, calling in this case, a mock service. In the demo, I wanted to use only mock services, but you could call any APIs, graph, SharePoint, whatever you wanted to retrieve the data. you format it in a data set and data kind of format, and then the chart will be happy to see that data. So I know I'm going really quickly here, but we're running out of time. I've barely scratched the surface about how you can use the PnP chart control, but I do hope that I've convinced you to use the chart control in your own solutions, and that you'll go take a look at the sample web parts to implement whatever charts your solutions need. If you need any help, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm Bernier H. And if you ever have a cool looking chart that you'd like to implement, I'm always looking for opportunities to create creative charts, so just reach out. That's it for me. Thank you for your time. Back to you, Patrick.
Awesome stuff. As always, thank you, Hugo, for running through that. I hope that's opened up some possibilities for folks to see ways to incorporate the chart controls into their projects. So really great work there. Excited to see that, and check out that sample.